Hey, folks, welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, I hope things are going well for you so far this week. You know what? This has been quite a week, quite a semester, and quite a year. I know it's not just me, right? Um, for me, I'm a little discombobulated today. So last night we're having health problems. Yes, COVID, not in our home, but our relatives and so forth. And so things are getting a little bit, crazy there. Thank you, Aaron. And then last night, guys. So my daughter, she's how old is she now? Is she 19? Um, Maybe she's 19. I guess she's 19, something like that. Um, So she and her brother live in an apartment. Well, her cat had kidney failure, and so she had to take the cat on into the vet to see what they could do. And the vet said, "There's nothing we can do." And so here, my 19-year-old daughter is taking her 6-year-old cat, still a young cat, right, into the vet, and the cat has to be put down. So it's like, oh my gosh, a family member in the hospital with COVID, a cat from my daughter that is going. It's crazy, right? And then I get an email from another student in another class, and their mother has COVID, and they had just been robbed. Right? What a year. What a year. Everyone, thank you. Jeremy, Aaron, I appreciate it. So Timothy, Joseph, great to have you along. Now, I didn't mean to start on a downer, right? It's just wow. And so it's really also kind of a kudos to you guys. You guys have really stuck with this semester. You've been the stalwarts from day one, and you've really made this a successful class and a successful semester for all of us. And I truly appreciate that. I really do. Yes, we're not done yet, but we are so close to done. And I think I have successfully demonstrated to you that if you stick with me, I stick with you, and I take care of you through all the assignments, and I'm going to take care of you through the final project, and I'm going to take care of you through the final. You keep coming and contributing as you have been, and I'll take care of you. So that's kind of our preamble. Looks like we've got folks coming along. Mario, okay, Mario just got done with COVID, right? Yeah. And at this, guys, remember when this first started? It's like you knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who got COVID. And now it's like us and our immediate friends and family. It's really something. Um, One thing I'm going to ask you guys at the end of the class for is some advice for you from you. As you've noticed, what I've kind of done here is one, I kind of told a little bit about what's going on in my life and so forth. A, because I just wanted to tell you and say, hey, it's been a rough semester for all of us. But B, what I want to do is I want to find a way to ease in to the lecture. I've noticed that a lot of us kind of get on at 2 or 3 minutes after, which is totally fine. But if I've already started, then you kind of feel like, oh, I got to catch up. And that's not a good feeling. I don't want you to have to feel anxious when you log in and feel like, oh, I've missed something. Um, I've also had students in the past share with me that they like it when one of my videos kind of eases in so they can kind of get into the right headspace and ease into the lecture. So what I've done today, of course, is I just kind of told you how things are going and so on and so forth. But it's I don't know if that's effective. I'd like some ideas. So as we go through the lecture today, at the end, I'll ask, hey, go ahead and write in your ideas. Should it be I tell a story? Should it be I tell a joke? Should it be I give a summary of how my week has been? Should I tell something? What are some things I can do to maybe spend 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning of the lecture easing in? Because we're at 4 minutes in and we're about to start. Okay, so we'll touch upon that afterwards. Also, one more thing, we will be using the poll today. So poll everywhere, POLLEV.com, I think it is. It's not open right now, but in a little bit it will be. I'll let you know when. .com. So just so you know, have another window open for that and we'll take care of it. Okay? All right, let's start. Let's do this. All right, business ethics and cheating. What counts as cheating? You know, it's like anything else in life, guys. It's really easy to identify the extremes of something, right? So, you know, lying on a resume saying that you have skills that you don't have, that's bad, right? But what if you are putting something on a resume that you have some experience in, but you just really have a high degree of confidence that if you were hired to do it, you could learn it very, very quickly? So is it bad to say, I have experience? You don't have to say, I have some or little or I've dabbled. You could say, no, I have experience in that, because you have dabbled in it and you have confidence that you can, develop those skills quickly. Is that cheating or lying? Now, personally, I think no. But the question is, where's that line, right? Where is the line of cheating? Where is the line of being dishonest in business? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Yeah, Aaron, fudging numbers for stakeholders, right? So we've already got a few contributors. Awesome comment, real world example. Yes, right? Fudging the numbers, right? It's the old joke. I'm going to tell you the old joke, guys. Sorry, you have to hear the old joke. You've already heard it, but you're going to hear it again. So this guy is hiring an accountant. First candidate comes in, and the hiring manager says, I have just one question. What's 1 + 1? And the job candidate says, that's easy. It's 2. All right, thank you very much. We'll let you know. Next candidate comes in. All right, this interview is just one question. What's 1 + 1? Candidate says, I'm pretty sure it's 2. And the hiring manager says, all right, thank you very much. That's correct. We'll talk to you later. Third candidate comes in, and we got one question. What's 1 + 1? And the candidate, without blinking, says, what do you want it to be? Manager says, when can you start? Yeah, right? Feels like that a lot. Okay, all right. That's interesting. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Interesting. There is something to the fake it till you make it, right? Okay, so let's explore this today. Now, we're looking at 2 readings, right? But trust me, the topic is exactly the same. So we're going to explore this topic in some depth. Both the readings kind of seamlessly address it. So what counts? Well, let's do this. We're going to start with excerpts from Diophysis, book 3, in case you were wondering, right? Okay. First of all, in order for us to really explore this topic, we need to have a good understanding of what is ethics. What are ethics? Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give you a good old standard dictionary definition, but I don't have a whole lot of respect for dictionary definitions. I like examples, right? So let's look at the dictionary definition. Standards of behavior. Standards of behavior that tell us how human beings ought to act, all about act, in the many situations in which they find themselves. Friends, parents, children, citizens, business people, teachers, students, professionals, and so on. In other words, we inhabit many, many, many roles. You are a son or a daughter. You are a husband or a wife or a spouse. You are a friend. You are a brother or sister. You are a student. You are an employee. You are a citizen. You inhabit many, many, many roles. And in these roles, you run across several situations in which you need to make decisions on the best course of action. But the best course of action, as you know, when I'm inhabiting the role of a teacher, may not be the best course of action when I'm inhabiting the role as a parent or as a husband. Okay. Ethics are not feelings, they're not personal values, they're not religious morals, they're not laws, they're not culturally accepted norms. Well, then what are they? Well, let's play with this for a minute. And I'm going to go ahead and bring myself down here for a moment. All right, get myself out of the way just a smidge. So let's look at a principle. Let's look at personal values. Okay, personal value, a personal guiding principle. So, for example, for myself, I always try to tell the truth. Okay, and that is a personal value, a personal principle that I embrace. I always try to tell the truth. What do I mean try? Well, because there are situations and I just don't know. We're gonna explore this, right? But when I am cognizant of the truth and I'm in a situation where I am expressing something, I always try to tell the truth. That's me. All right? That's me personally, right? So then let's continue on. Then what about a moral? Okay, a moral is something that is codified, a value that is codified by the community. Okay, so here's the idea. Let's say that I try to tell the truth, and you try to tell the truth, and everybody else tries to tell the truth, and the community says, you know what? It would actually be really advantageous to the community if we were to all agree to try and tell the truth. So what we're going to do is codify it, okay? Now, to Hayden's point, does that become dogma? It certainly can, which is where ethics come into play, so hold on to that. Don't worry, I'll give you some, we'll get the little point thing going on here in a moment. Okay, so what about this? Well, okay, thou shalt not bear false witness. That is where a community, in this case, the Judeo-Christian tradition, has agreed that we're going to try to all embrace telling the truth, okay? So they write it in stone, if you will. All right, so that's a value and that's a moral. Well then, what about a law? Well, a law is something that can be enforced and has consequences. Okay, so this is where the community says, you know what, we're actually going to enforce this idea of telling the truth, and we are going to exact a penalty from you. There will be consequences if you breach that trust. So, for example, we have laws regarding libel, slander, and perjury, right? These are all laws, all founded on the idea of truth. Okay. Then what's an ethic? Well, an ethic is the best thing to do given the circumstance. Okay? So as a parent, you tell a child, yes, there is a Santa Claus. Now, here's the thing about saying, yes, there is a Santa Claus. First of all, well, okay. Just so you know, if you're hearing it here first, there's no Santa Claus. Okay, so with that out of the way, by telling a child that there is a Santa Claus, you're lying. You're also bearing false witness. You never seen Santa Claus. You never met the guy because he doesn't exist. Therefore, to say there is one, you're bearing false witness. You've perjured yourself. You've said to your child, who trusts you and trusts that you're going to tell the truth, you've said there's a Santa Claus, you've perjured yourself. And so why would that be an ethical thing to do? So let's take a moment. We're going to go to our puppy cam. I want you to express to me why you think it would be an ethical thing to do for a parent to say, yes, there is a Santa Claus. Why is that okay when it's not the truth, it's false witness, and you've perjured yourself? So let's look at the ethical side of this, okay? So, puppy cam, and then we'll come back and add a bunch of points because you guys are already jumping in. I love it. Okay, let's come back and take a look at this. By the way, I already know we have from before contributors and real world examples. Okay, now let's start with this. All right, so let's take a look at some of this. So Timothy says, I don't think it's ethical for a parent to tell their kid anything they know the kid will eventually find out is not true and will cause them trauma. Okay, so I hear what you're saying. And by the way, one of the things about ethics is there's no right answer. There is only the best answer giving a dilemma. We'll talk about that in a moment. I'm going to respectfully disagree. I have told my children many, many, many things that in my heart of hearts, I think this may not necessarily be the case, but I want to encourage them. So when I tell my kid when they draw something, hey, that's really good. It's not really good. It's a stupid piece of junk. But I'm going to take it, put it on the refrigerator and say, you have some real skill. I really like this. I think you ought to keep it. Now, why am I doing this? Because I want to encourage my child. I want to show them that it's okay to try things, to take risks, and to develop their skills. And to do that, I am going to just simply say, hey, great job, right? I really like it. It's a lot better for me to say, I really like that drawing. It's a good drawing than it is to say, okay, listen, it's really not any good. But you have to understand you're a child. You have no skills. You have not practiced. You're not even fully developed in terms of your motor skills. And so it's going to take a while. So I'm going to take this and put it in the trash, but I want you to keep going. No. So I'm going to tell them a lie in order to encourage them, right? That's what we mean by situation in which you find yourself. As a parent, sometimes you say things in order to bring about a positive result that may not necessarily be true. Jeremy says, let's see, these small lies have been justified by creating a fantasy for the child. Later in life, they find out, rarely does somebody get upset. Some people do. I remember, and probably many of us remember the very day, the very moment we found out there was no Santa Claus. I remember it specifically. And yeah, it's kind of like torn up. But on the other hand, I remember with such fondness the illusion and fantasy of Santa Claus. One day, guys, I got a tape recorder. It was an old tape recorder back when I was a kid. I'm this freaking big, right? And I got this tape recorder. And back then, when you buy a tape recorder, it had a 10-minute tape in it that you could use as a sample. And it had a recording from Santa Claus. Turns out it was my grandfather, okay? Oh, but my gosh, I remember that moment as one of the happiest moments of my life. And even though I later find out there's no Santa Claus, I still remember the magic of that moment and go, I don't know that that could ever be recreated. Let's see. So Aaron says, it's a collective social norm in which society might, and we're a member of, and telling the truth about Santa Claus goes against the expected behavior. Yes, we kind of have to bear in mind what are the societal norms, right? What is expected? How do we fit into the larger community? I really like that. Mason, so you're nurturing your child's imagination. They're not equipped with emotional skills to deal with the harsh realities of the world. So Mason, to your point, yeah, so Chris Rock has, well, not new. It's probably like 3 or 4 years old now, but he has this comedy routine that goes back and forth from absolutely brilliant to not so great, but the absolutely brilliant parts are amazing. And one of the things that he says is, you want to tell your kids, listen, in this world, nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about you. You need to learn. You need to work. You need to provide for yourself. You need to get out, because nobody cares about you except your parents. And even they're a little half the time. That was the joke, right? But you're not going to tell that to your kid, right? So yeah, I love it. Everyone kind of expects it in a way, feel like it's Christmas and it's just what you do, right? Now I also agree with your kids need to understand that you work hard, right? Holidays, yeah. Let's see. Timothy, yeah, we got references to the past, right? Yeah, okay, let's see. Ethical is present a situation, absolutely. Let's see a bit more. Mario chimes in Mexico, I don't believe in Santa, but we do believe in the 3 wise men, January 6th. That's cool. That's cool. I didn't realize that there was a different emphasis there. Very good. Okay, guys, you're amazing. I'm just going to plain take this up to 10. And I know that we had 2 new contributors in there. We had a couple people reference other lectures, and we had at least 2 real-world examples. So there's our first one. There's our first one. And I have a feeling they're going to keep going because we've got more of this coming on. Okay, so you know the routine. 8:53:10. 8:53:10. Right? Very good. Very, very good. Okay. All right, so let's keep going. Here's the thing, guys. It all comes down to ethical dilemmas. Nobody in those comments there was wrong. Nobody was right. An ethical dilemma is when you're between a rock and a hard place, damned if you do, damned if you don't. There is no right answer. There is only the best answer given the situation. Now, with COVID right now, we are in the midst of an excellent example of ethical dilemmas. All right, let's just talk about going back to school. If you send kids back to school, they're all going to get sick, bring it home to their parents, and it's going to be awful. This is ridiculous. We need to shut down the schools. But then the parents who work and can't find daycare are like, what am I supposed to do with my kids? I can't just leave them at home. There is no daycare. I've got to go to work, right? Same thing with the governor's mandate that he just said, hey, no gatherings, no social gatherings outside your immediate family for the next 7, or what is it, 2 weeks, right? Well, okay. On one hand, that's fantastic. That's right. That's the right thing to do for public health. On the other hand, okay, if I need a babysitter, if I need a caregiver, what do I do? So on and so forth. None of these have a right answer. They all have a least bad answer, right? And that's the thing about ethical dilemmas. And that's the thing about honesty in business that we are going to explore today. We'll move on from this. Okay. I'm going to tell you a story about me, because it's always about me. But it's an example of what was in the reading, and I'll show you here in a moment. This is when our poll is going to start. So I'm going to tell you a story, and then at the end of the story, I'm going to ask you, which direction was the right direction for me, okay? So if you just bring up another window and get this poll set, I'll go ahead and activate the poll, but don't answer until you see what the question is, okay? So here's the story. You see that car right there? My wife and I had a Ford Escort just like that. It was a white Ford Escort. It wasn't that car, but it was that make, that model, that year, that color, everything, a car just like that. And I'm like 23 years old or so. We're really, really young in our marriage, and maybe 24. And we had to sell the car. So we're going to sell the car. Now, a little bit of background. At one point when I was driving that car, this was in Memphis, Tennessee, I drove through a flood. Things were flooding, and I drove through a flood. And it messed up the engine. It started running on 3 cylinders instead of the full 4. Took it in. Turns out that the engine head, had warped slightly, right? So you got the engine block, and you have the head where the pistons come up, and on top is the head, and it warped a little bit. So a friend of mine and I, we took the head off. I took it into a shop. They shaved it ever so slightly, only taking off like 0.5 millimeter, right? But even a 0.5 millimeter messes up the timing of the pistons. And so what we did was he made a shim, basically a gasket made out of metal. He made a shim that sat between the head and the engine block, and it ran great. It ran fantastic. Everything was perfect. It was marvelous. It was stupendous. I had one bolt left. You know how you put a whole engine back together and you have one bolt left? I still have no idea where that bolt went. Anyway, so later I'm selling this car. Now, as I mentioned before, I really, really, really strive to be completely honest and completely ethical in everything that I do. That doesn't say I'm always successful, but I really try. And so somebody came to look at the car, and he's looking at it and so on and so forth. And I'm telling him everything about this car. I'm saying everything I know about, I'm explaining, I'm going through and so on and so forth, because I'm all about honesty. And then I explain the shim, and I open up the hood and I point out there's this teeny tiny gold line between the head and the engine block. And I say, okay, now the head warped and this, that. And so we shaved it down and put in shim. It works great. And he stopped me and he says, hold on, the head warped? And I said, well, yeah, but that we took it off and we shaved it and we put in the shim. It runs fantastic. He didn't even say another word. He just turned around, walked to his car, and drove off. That's it. And I'm like, well, crap. I mean, I'm 23, 24 years old. I need to sell this car, right? And from me explaining that shim, he walked away. And I thought, well, geez, maybe I shouldn't do that. So the next person came to look at the car. And once again, I'm showing them everything. I'm opening the hood. I'm showing them everything. But I'm not explaining everything. But I answer 100% truthfully every single question that is asked. So they're looking at it, they're driving it. They ask, can I take it to a mechanic? You can absolutely take it to a mechanic to have them look at it. I am prepared to answer every question they have, but I am not going to volunteer information about the warped head. I'm not going to volunteer that. If you ask me about that gold shim, or if your mechanic asks what's going on, they wouldn't ask, they would know, then I'll answer it. But I'm not going to volunteer that information. And that person bought the car. They bought it, okay? So here's what I want to ask you. And this is what is coming up in the poll. Is which approach do you think was most ethical for me? Tell the buyer everything that I know about the car and not make the sale, or answer all the buyer's questions fully and truthfully? So which one do you think was most appropriate? Tell me what you think. And just go out to pollev.com, and this long name, I think I'm going to buy a membership so I can shorten that name. That's ridiculous. So let's see how things come in through here. And maybe while we're going, I'll tell you what, while you're going in and doing that, let's go over to PuppyCam for just a few minutes. So go ahead and log in and tell me what you think. Okay, let's come back and take a look at this. Now, a few of you chimed in the comments. Joseph said, answer all the questions, which would be B. Timothy says that if I think if it runs well and it could be repaired, if anything happened, it's safe to go with B as well. The majority of you went with B, 78% with B. 22 of you said A. So my first course of action, which is where my immediate gut was. This is where my soul is, right? This is how I want it to be. Oh, my thingy isn't working. On the other hand, I didn't make the sale there. Okay, that's gone up to 25% to 75%. Here's the deal, guys. You're both right. That's the thing about ethics, okay? Aaron says both are equally ethical. Oh, wow. Oh, more and more people are thinking I'm a jerk. Oh, thank God. No, so here's the thing. This is a real-world example of exactly what is talked about in the reading, okay? In the reading, there's these two dudes. One of them is the Stoic Diogenes of Babylon. And Diogenes says, okay, and he's talking about selling corn. I was selling a used car. He's selling corn, right? He says, and by the way, we're going to come over here and we're going to do, a few of you chimed in on the real world example. So I'm going to throw that in there. Okay. Diogenes says, the seller must declare the defects of his wares as far as the law of the land requires, but otherwise, providing he tells no untruths, is entitled as a seller of goods to sell them as profitably as he can. So what he's basically saying is you have to tell them everything that the law requires you to tell them. So whatever the law says, you have to tell them, you have to tell them. So if I'm selling corn, do I have to tell them the nutritional content of the corn? Yes, because here in the United States, you have to put the nutritional content on the bag or box or can or whatever. So I need to tell them that. I don't need to tell them what kind of nutrients or fertilizers or anything like that I used on the can, because the law doesn't require me to. And so long as I don't lie, it's okay. I just need to be truthful and tell whatever the law requires, okay? However, his student, his pupil, Antipater, which is a great example of where you can totally disagree with your teacher and still be copacetic, he says, no. All the facts must be revealed, and the purchaser must be as fully informed as the seller. Okay? And that means including if there's a lower price somewhere else. Which, what he's saying is, Lon, your first approach was the correct approach. You need to tell the purchaser everything you know about the car, or in this case, the corn. You need to tell them everything you know so that they are equally as informed as you are of the state of that product. Okay? So this is just a demonstration, folks, of how when we go back and we looked at, our results here, 33-67, right? This debate between Antipater and Diogenes, it's a legitimate conversation to be had. But at the end of the day, it's, both sides are somewhat supportable, right? By the way, Timothy here said, but how many people buy stuff in stores and online where they have all the information, like in the drug commercials and so forth? Yeah, I mean, it is ridiculous to think that I should be as informed of a, say, drug as the drug manufacturer. They know everything about it, so on and so forth. But so long as it meets the requirements of the FDA and I trust the FDA, then I can use it, right? I don't know. So Aaron says, my parents sold a house in Texas. They had legally disclosed that a tenant had committed suicide in the garage. Really? I wonder why they had to disclose that somebody had committed suicide in there. Otherwise, yeah, gosh, it just makes you think of haunted house movies and so forth. Because how does that affect the home? I don't know, right? Unless looky-loos come by on Halloween or something like that. That is wild. Yeah, Mario says, yeah, real estate, you have to disclose all that. Wow. And that was the law in Texas. Yeah. So, by the way, reference, because Mario keyed in on you, real world example there. Great. And we're actually going to talk about selling houses here in a moment. All right. So, we're going to skip that one. So let's talk about selling houses. So here's a story that is in one of the readings, the villa on the fish-filled lake. Here's the idea. We have this guy named Pythias. All right, Pythias. He owns this villa on a lake. Really, really nice place. And he wants to sell it, but he wants to get the best money he can, right? I mean, it's a villa on a lake. He wants to maximize his return. Well, he hears that this really big-time Uber fishmonger is in town. I mean, the biggest fish salesman in the whole region. He has the corner on the fish market. And Pythias gets this idea. He says, you know what I'm going to do? He goes out and he goes to the ocean and he pays all of the fishermen there on the shore for over the weekend to fish in his lake. Now the fishermen are like, there's no fish in that lake. And he says, I know. But I am going to pay you the equivalent of 2 days of fishing or whatever, a days of fishing out on the ocean. And they're like, well, heck, okay. So basically I just tool around on a really nice lake and get paid without having to fish. All right. Okay, that's fine. So they're all out there fishing. And then Pythias invites this fishmonger over to the villa. And the fishmonger, the fish guy, he looks out on the lake and he goes, what are all those fishermen doing out there? And Pythias says, why wonder? All the fish for Syracuse market are here. They come here to be in fresh water. The fishermen cannot dispense with this villa, meaning they have to fish in this lake. This is where all the fresh fish in the region come from. And I own this lake, therefore they pay me to let them fish in this lake. They have to have access to it. And the fishmonger's like, whoa, you own the lake and it's full of fish? Yeah, well, look at them all. And the fishmonger says, okay, you got to sell me your villa. And Pythias, no. I'd be a fool to walk away from this. I'm not going to sell. And that just gets the monger going all the more. I've got to buy your villa. No, listen, I appreciate what you're saying, but it's really nice. I really enjoy it. It's a good money-making venture, so and so. And so now the fishmonger is just coming out of his frickin' skin. And he says, I will pay you umpteen bazillion dollars or whatever for this villa. And Pythias says, all right. If it really means that much to you, I will sell it to you. So they exchange, they sell it, and Pythias takes off. Well, the next day, the fishmonger, he goes out there in the lake, and the lake is empty. Nobody's fishing there. So he goes, well, what the heck? So he goes out to the ocean and asks the fishermen, why aren't you off, fishing the lake? And the fishermen are like, fishing the lake? Dude, there ain't nothing in that lake. We never fish there. Okay, now, here's the thing, guys. I think on the surface, we can all agree that that was dishonest and unethical of Pythias. All right? But now, let's talk about selling homes. Those of you who've been in the real estate market, here are some tips and tricks you can do. So, baking cookies just before an open house. Is that ethical? Baking cookies, baking bread, that's kind of a tip that a lot of realtors will give you, is clean the house really, really nice, and then just before an open house, bake cookies, right? I know I have a neighbor who put his home up for sale, and there was some graffiti on a wall just down the street, okay? And Aaron's like, yeah, cookies. There was some graffiti on a wall just down the street. My neighbor knew somebody at City Hall, and so called City Hall and said, hey, do me a favor, come take that graffiti down. Because he didn't want that graffiti to be seen, and it's totally on the wall right there, by somebody who's looking at the open house, okay? We have a police officer who lives just up the street. Asking a police officer neighbor to park his squad car on the driveway the week of the open house. So he has a squad car. It can be in a garage. But say, hey, can you do me a favor for this week of the open house? Can you park your police car in your driveway instead of in your garage? Okay? Are these ethical? Now, nothing here is criminal, right? But what you're trying to do is convey more value to the home than it may otherwise have. Now, personally, I don't have a problem with any of these, but I think the case could be made that, especially in, say, having graffiti taken down, you're hiding the fact that there are gangs in the area that are putting up graffiti and so on and so forth. So here's the thing. I want to ask you, and this is where we'll go to puppy cam for just a moment. In your job, is there ever a time where you kind of have to make an internal calculation on what is the most ethical course of action, and maybe sometimes you smidge it just a little bit, right? Now, I shared with you one of mine with selling of the car. I'd like to hear a story from you on where you kind of had to make a decision on which direction to go. And this is going to take us all the way to the top in our calculations. So tell me a story. Let's play with this. Okay, let's take a look at this. By the way, Timothy agrees with me. I think graffiti is the only one that's hiding something versus, highlighting something. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not going to say that I consider this person, horrible and awful for having done that. But yeah, I think that is a slight example of hiding. So Timothy says, in terms of an example, I had a potential client, let's see, we're giving a proposal for landscaping work, who asked if I have the landscaping done would add value to their home. That is a great example, right? Now, here's the thing. I think if you look at landscaping in aggregate, landscaping adds value to a home. It's the curb appeal. Curb appeal is a real thing, but you can't guarantee it, and you certainly cannot put a number on it. It will increase the value of your home by 1.73%. You can't do that. So when you say, yes, it'll add value, probably more accurate to say, well, by and large, curb appeal adds value. Now, I can't guarantee that, and I can't tell you how much, but that tends to be something that homeowners or home buyers look for. Yeah, it puts you in a bind there. I like it. Ryan, hey, Ryan, we got a new contributor. My mother owns a tow truck business. She oftentimes has to sell cars and is afraid not to disclose everything wrong with it, so she, doesn't sell very many. And by the way, that's our, we've already got more real world examples. So we're now at the 10 on real world examples. I love it. Ryan, that is a great example, right? Is your mother is in a real bind because on one hand, this is some sort of way that she can, get a return on her business. On the other hand, she wants to be honest in what she does. So it puts her in an ethical dilemma. So Aaron, I ran medical courses and was told to use the method of everyone gets a trophy instead of requiring to set testable levels of competency. Yes, great example, right? Is it really just all you have to do is show up and you get it? Or is it like, no, you actually have to demonstrate some level of competency? That is a great example, folks, of an ethical dilemma. Bang on. Let's see. Timothy, I responded by saying, we are not realtors or appraisers. Not bad. Clever. Good response. But Jeremy, but I will express fish cookies on that point. That's right. Realtors. Yeah, it's all right. Hayden, working with loans, people ask all the time about the rates they can get. We just have to be very general with what we say. Yes, this is really good. And Timothy's like, aren't we at 10 contributors? You know what? I think we are. Here's the thing. So yeah, Hayden, absolutely. So my son is a loan officer, and so he's negotiating loans constantly for his clients. And as well that things are constantly changing, and whether or not you lock in a loan today or lock it in tomorrow or the day after, the numbers can be different, the deals can be different. And so oftentimes my son's clients will want, what is the exact thing I can expect without locking it in? And he has to kind of say, it kind of depends. And it makes him look like he's wishy-washy or being dishonest because he's hemming and hawing, when in fact, no, I just don't have that information. Great work, guys. Great work. Okay. I just like this quote. In a civilized life, law floats on a sea of ethics. Chief Justice Earl Warren. Okay, now, that was Diophysis. But now we have St. Thomas Aquinas on cheating. We're talking about the same thing here. He just has a different vantage point. And in this case, we're just going to kind of run through a lot of the reading. So bear with me, if you will. Do you remember back when we were talking with Plato about the idea of natural use? Something for example, my shoe, here we go, my shoe. The natural use of this shoe is to wear it. The secondary use of the shoe is to sell it. Now, you can totally sell it, and that's just fine, but that is a secondary use. The natural use is to wear it. Well, we need to remember that when we look through this reading. So bear with me. I'm going to go through the reading with you, and then we'll talk about what it means. All right? So, Thomas Aquinas says, a tradesman is one whose business consists in exchanging things. He exchanges things. You know that. We've already discussed it. According to the philosopher, yeah, this is the philosopher that you and I read earlier, right? Plato? Exchanging of things is twofold. Natural, as it were, and necessary, whereby one commodity is exchanged for another, or money taken in exchange for a commodity in order to satisfy the needs. He says, okay, so setting this context. And since you and I already read this philosopher, we already know what St. Thomas Aquinas is talking about. Okay, so continuing on, the other kind of exchange is either that of money for money or any commodity for money, not on account of necessity, but profit. Okay, so if I'm buying and selling something because I need to buy and sell that thing because I need it in my life, that is for necessity. But if I'm buying and selling something just for profit, okay, this kind of exchange, properly speaking, regards the tradesman according to the philosopher, which is saying, okay, this is a completely different kind of wealth, accumulation. Now, once again, you and I already know that because we did read this dude earlier in the semester. Okay? So that's just setting the foundation. The former kind of exchange is commendable because it supplies a natural need. The latter is justly deserving of blame because considered in itself satisfies greed for gain. All right, we already know all that. But now he's setting this as context for what is considered appropriate business behavior and ethics. So let's see what he does. So, question is profit fraud? And he says if the gain is used to satisfy a natural need, then it's not fraud. Okay, let's see what he says. Gain, which is the end of trading, though not implying by its nature anything virtuous or necessary, does not in itself connote anything sinful or contrary to virtue. Wherefore, nothing preventing gain from being directed to some necessary or even virtuous end, thus trading becomes lawful. I know, right? When these old saints write, it's hard to follow along. But what he's saying is, listen, if you're exchanging goods and you are doing so out of necessity, and those profits which you are accumulating are meant to meet necessity or something virtuous, then you're totally cool. You're totally ethical. You're good to go. Okay. All right. Well, okay. What about when it comes to disclosing defects, such as the head of my engine block for the Ford Escort? Okay. Let's see what he says. Is it lawful to sell something for more than it's worth? Think about it. Now, in capitalism, we sell stuff for more than it's worth all the time. That's the point of profit. That's the profit margin. I'm either selling it for more than it's worth because the market will bear that or because there's a perception, so forth. Let's look at what he says. It is altogether sinful to have recourse or deceit in order to sell anything for more than its just price, because this is to deceive one's neighbor and so as to injure him. All right? So, he says, yeah, you have to disclose things. You cannot sell something for more than it's worth unless they are willing to and you've disclosed everything, right? Contracts should be entirely free from double dealing. The seller must not impose upon the bidder, nor the buyer upon the bids against him. So, let's put this in plain English. It's saying, listen, okay, I'm going to sell you this phone. I'm going to sell you this phone. So long as I tell you everything about the phone, I've disclosed everything that I know about the phone, and you've examined the phone, you've used the phone, so on and so forth, then we can mutually agree upon the worth, because you say, okay, I think it's worth $700, and then I have the choice whether or not to sell it to you for that $700, right? But if I try to deceive you in any way, or if I try to, talk up some of its features and kind of make them sound like they really matter, now I'm starting to get into the dishonest realm. But then we ask the question, do you need to disclose absolutely everything. Okay? Well, let's see what he says. There is no need to publish, disclose, beforehand by public crier the defects of the goods one is offering for sale, because if he were to begin by announcing its defects, the bidder would be frightened to buy. Okay, so let's first talk about that. You don't have to advertise on a billboard all the defects of your product. Okay, you don't have to include it in your advertisements. You don't have to include it in your material. You do not have to disclose, out to the world all the defects of your product, because nobody's going to come anywhere near you. He gets this. He understands this. Okay? Though ignorance of the quality that might render the thing good and serviceable. Okay, that's fine. Such defects ought to be stated to each individual that offers to buy. Okay, so here's the thing. I can advertise my goods. They're great. They're fantastic. They're marvelous, so long as you don't lie about what they do and so forth. And then when the buyer comes to me, then and only then do I really talk about its limitations, its defects, really its limitations, what it can and cannot do, and how it may limit you in some way or another. And then that individual can decide what to do. And then he be able to compare the various points with the other, the good from the bad. Nothing prevents that which is defective in respect being useful in many others. In other words, something could be defective, but still be totally useful. If you've bought something used, these lights, you can't see them because they're shining on my beautiful face. These lights, I bought them on KSL. Yeah, they're scraped up. They're beat up, kind of in rough shape, but they still work, right? And so the guy selling them on KSL, he didn't say there's a scratch here, they're beat up here. He says, they're used, but they're fine. Okay, he doesn't need to tell me any more than that. Now, when I go to check them out, he should be willing to say, well, this is what works, this is what doesn't. Does it still meet your need? Yes, it still meets my need. Okay, that's what he says is ethical in terms of disclosing information about your product. So, in that case, what I did with the car is just fine, right? Okay. However, once customers show up to the shop, if such defects be hidden and the seller does not make them known, the sale will be illicit and fraudulent. There's no need to publish beforehand the public crier, but you still got to tell them. So in other words, all right, so when I put my car up for sale, I didn't need to advertise in the want ad. Back then there were want ads in newspapers that it had this messed up engine. But he is saying once the buyer comes to my home and looks at it, I should disclose the engine. Now, I should disclose it and say, but it still runs fine. It is a defect, but it does not affect the running of the engine. So St. Thomas Aquinas would say that my first take on this, disclosing everything, was the appropriate take. So he would agree with Diogenes. All right? Okay. Every defect? At what detail? This is where we're talking about, can you really know every single detail of a product, right? If the defect be manifest, for instance, if a horse has but one eye, or if the goods, are thoroughly useless, then, provided the seller has as much and ought to know the price, he is not bound to state the defect of the goods. Okay, so what he's saying is, if it is blatantly obvious that there is a defect, you don't need to say there's a defect. So, for example, if there's a big dent in the hood, you don't have to say, if you look there, there's a big dent in the hood. The buyer's like, yeah, I can tell that. right? If there's a crack in the windshield, you say, I'd like to point out this crack in the windshield. You don't have to point that out. It's blatant. It is manifest. Okay? But now here's the thing. I open the hood, and there's that gold shim. You can clearly see the gold shim. Do I need to point that out? Is the defect manifest? I don't know. I mean, it's there. You can see it. You'd be blind not to see it. On the other hand, would you know what that's there for? Right? That's where these things get a little squishy. Okay? So, let's wrap this up, guys. I really like this quote from Benjamin Franklin. Tricks and treachery are the practice of fools that don't have brains enough to be honest. I like that, who don't have brains enough to be honest. If you are a smart, moral, ethical person, then you can be totally successful in this world being honest. But you know what? He kind of feels like anybody who cheats and lies and steals and so forth is kind of, below par when it comes to intelligence and so forth. So, yeah, Jeremy, totally agree. Totally agree. Okay? So, folks, there we are. Great, great work. We got 3 10s, baby. Very, very nice. I love it. And so, if you like, we can take a moment. Let me come over here, and we will take a moment. So if you're just here for the lecture, if you're watching it live or watching it on video, lecture's done. Go off, have a great day, do something awesome. If you want to see what you should focus on for the readings for next week in my class, stick around a moment. We will pull this up. So, discard. We'll go ahead and close that bad boy. Let's bring up Canvas. Come over to our class. And let's see what we want to do next week. Here. Modules. Right here. Look how far we are, guys. Okay. We are in Finance, Accounting, and Money. Don't worry, it's a lot more interesting than Finance, Accounting, and Money. Okay, Tulipmania, Travels of Marco Polo, Economic Organization of POW Camp, Romancing Busy Broker, Brief History of Accounting. You're like, holy heck, what the heck? Okay, this is what we're going to do, all right? Let's start here. You see this one right here? Skip it. Skip it. There is one test question from this video. That's a video, by the way. There is one test question from the video. I'll give you the answer in the lecture. Screw that, okay? Romance of a Busy Broker. You know what? If you want to read it, it's fine. It's a short story. It's a short story, and it has like this M. Night Shyamalan ending. The whole point of this reading is the M. Night Shyamalan ending. If you want to read it, you totally can, okay? But when it comes time to do the lecture, I'm going to give a synopsis of this story, okay? But it's kind of a famous little story. If you're curious about it and you like to read short stories and you're curious about this M. Night Shyamalan ending, go ahead. Go ahead. It's worth the read. But I'm going to give a synopsis, okay? Go ahead and read Economic Organization of a POW Camp. By the way, just so you know, this thing's totally short. Let me show you. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. Boom. That's it. Guys, that's it. That's a 10-minute read, okay? And that's if you get a snack halfway through. So go ahead and do that reading. Very fascinating. Very fascinating. All right? So what does that leave us here? That means Travels of Marco Polo. Skip it. Skip it. As a matter of fact, it's actually good reading, but I think it should have been much earlier in this course. I'm going to give you the main points that you need from this one, which leaves Tulip Mania. Yes, read this one. This is the big cojones, yeah, really good book. This thing is what we are talking about primarily next week. And this is a great story. And this is going to remind us, my friends, that this is not a history class. Okay? Because you're going to think it's history. No. We're going to talk about economic bubbles today. Tulip Mania is just a really famous economic bubble. Not too terribly long of a reading. I'd call this a maybe 15, 20-minute reading. But you really want to do this one. So, in review, yeah, fear of missing out. Yes, totally. Totally, Aaron, right? Okay, so in summary, Tulip Mania, totally read it. Travels of Marco Polo, skip it. Economic Organization of POW Camp, totally read it. Uber short. Romancing a Busy Broker, if you're curious and you like a short story, go ahead, but I'll provide a summary of it. Brief History of Accounting video, skip it. Don't worry about it, okay? So that, as they say, is that. I hope that's helpful. I hope that gives you the direction you need for next week. And once again, I'm going to just go ahead and tell you, Tulip Mania, one of my favorites. They're all my favorites. You poor sods, you have to hear that every single time. Okay, so that wraps everything up, folks. I'm going to stick around, see if there's any questions, any concerns, any clarifications I can offer. Otherwise, have a great day. More importantly, have a great weekend. Jeremy, you too. And we will see you all on Tuesday. All right? Have a good one.